Ohio State fans have been waiting a long time to say this. The Buckeyes are national champions. Buckeye Breakdown coming up next here in Atlanta.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mercedes Benz Stadium in Atlanta, a night that Ohio State fans will never forget. Unbelievable night for the Buckeyes. Certainly got off to a great start, maybe got a little bumpy, but they figured out a way to make sure that by the end of the night, they were the team that was last standing. It was red and white confetti all over the field. The Buckeyes pull off a 34-23 win. And they win the national championship. Brendan Gulick, Anthony Moeglin with you, part of our season-long coverage here, Ohio State Buckeyes on SI. And, you know, Anthony, when you win a championship, it's natural to think, right? You start to think about historical context. I don't think it is hyperbolic to say that this might be one of the greatest runs, if not the greatest run, in the history of college football, because this team beat top five teams in the AP this year. That's never happened before. Their playoff wins over Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame by an average of 18 points is ridiculous. And they came out and stomped Notre Dame early, withstood some of the craziness that Notre Dame, they weren't going to go away easily. And Ohio State finished it off.
Unbelievable to think back, because you think back to, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you think back to November, and this team felt like it was falling apart. Right? Yeah, you have that weird game against Nebraska. You fall to Michigan, and you're like, where is this going? How did we get here? This is the best roster in all of college football. Why can't we figure it out? And then it just seems like it took that Michigan game for them to figure it out. They buckled down. They talked about it a lot this week, about how they had a really deep conversation, a players-only meeting with Coach Day, so maybe not so much a players-only meeting, but a meeting nonetheless, where Jack Sawyer talked about it. He goes, it was a grown adult conversation. He said people got their feelings hurt. Truths were told, and you see the result of it, because that game they came out against Tennessee, it caught the entire nation not by surprise, but it put them on alert, because that was a whole different team than we were used to seeing. And then that carried on to the Oregon game. We talk about it all the time. You telling me we're going to win this game by 30, or should we win this game by 30? And then we ended up doing it. And then they finally face a little bit of adversity in the playoff against Texas, but Jack Sawyer makes the play of potentially the year and one of the best plays in all of Ohio State history. And then tonight, in a game that was everything that is good about college football, was tonight. And Notre Dame actually gets out to a lead. Ohio State fights back, scores a bunch of points unanswered. And then, to Notre Dame's credit, like you said, they fought back. They didn't go away. And they had an opportunity of starting 11 with the game on the line. Notre Dame gets the ball back with like 4 minutes left. You don't know what happens. But instead, deep ball to Jeremiah Smith. Ends the game, ends the season. Rings are going on to the Buckeyes' fingers. It's an amazing story.
I mean, how about there's so many areas to talk about, and I think over the course of the next week plus at least, we'll discuss a lot of what put this team together and how this all came about. But I don't know that you can start anywhere else appropriately other than a quarterback, because Will wasn't here 12 months ago, and for a guy to come in and not just have talent, but to win the locker room the way that he did, in a way where he also had a few bumpy moments throughout the course of the season and took ownership of them. And you could tell, even on a night like tonight, his first incomplete pass, it was a dicey throw. The next play, he ran the ball and absorbed a hit he didn't need to take, as if he was saying, I'm going to make sure that I make up for an almost interception. I think if you look at quarterback play in Ohio State the last 20 years, who are the three guys that won the national championship? Craig Krenzel, Cardale Jones, and Will Howard, right? Not J.T. Barrett, not Justin Fields, not Dwayne Haskins, not C.J. Stroud. It's kind of amazing that this is the group that got it done, and I think so much of it for Will is up here.
Yeah, and
in here.
he talked about it a little bit, and something that caught my attention is the confidence he had going into every game. And you don't think about it because it was in the press conference, and you can see that on our YouTube page. But they were talking about, hey, what's this coaching staff give you? How prepared are they? And Will was like, this offensive staff is grinding at all times. And he said that the result of that is he hasn't gone into a game in this entire playoff run where he hasn't had the utmost confidence, where he knows exactly what the opponent's going to do in the middle of the field. He knows exactly what the opponent's going to do on third down and medium, third down and long, third and short. He knows exactly what they're going to do in the high red, the medium red, the low red area. He said he's never been as prepared as he was during this playoff run. And you could see him just play free. When he said that, it clicked in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's just going out in the field. He knows exactly what he's going to get because he's well prepared. And the result of that is great football. And when you start playing great football, the team starts to rally around you. It's a shaky situation when he plays really bad against the team up north, and a lot of people pinned it on him. Throws 2 bad interceptions, didn't play all that great, maybe was concussed, maybe wasn't, but still, he didn't play good. And you could really lose the locker room very quickly. His result, or his, response to that adversity was go put on a 4-game stretch that is incredible. And just kudos to him. Hats off to him. He's incredible.
I mean, 17 of 21 tonight for 231 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the 56-yard pass to Jeremiah Smith to kind of seal it at the end. He started the game 13 consecutive completions. And I felt like after Notre Dame went on a really long drive to start the game, Ohio State, it wasn't just about, hey, you got to score. It was figure out a way to, kill any potential Notre Dame momentum. And I actually felt going into that drive, a lot of that fell on Will's shoulders, right? He doesn't have to make every play, but I felt like that first drive of the game, he couldn't be the reason that things fell apart. And right away, he was crisp. And I thought that gave Ohio State a chance to respond to a good early Notre Dame drive.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Notre Dame goes 80 plays or whatever, 75 plays on 18 or 75 yards on 18 plays, and they take
80 plays.
Yeah. And it took 9.5 minutes. And what's really hard for an offense is they didn't do anything football-wise for about 30 minutes, right? They get warmed up, they go in the locker room, come out, lose or win the toss, defer, and they don't get the ball for 9.5 game minutes. And so you're getting a little cold, all right? And then Notre Dame punches in and takes a 7-0 lead. Yeah, there's a lot of football left. But guess what? What you can't do is come out and go 3 and out. 3rd and 5, backed up. You have the ball pretty much right where we're standing on that hash mark over there. And you throw an incomplete pass there, then it's like this whole place gets a little worried because that's the blueprint, right?
Yep.
That's the blueprint. Notre Dame bury the clock, get 1 or 2 drives, and just shorten the game and make it really hard for Ohio State. But instead, they convert on 3rd down, and then they started rolling. He throws one. If you guys can find the back view of the first drive of the game, Will to Emeka Egbuka, it was one of the crispest throws I've seen in a long, long time. And he was just sharp from there on out. First drive for Ohio State, 75 yards. Second drive, 76 yards. Third drive, 80 yards. Fourth drive, 75 yards. So these weren't, hey, got short fields and scored. These were, hey, you got to convert on 3rd down. Let's talk about Brandon Ennis real quick. 2 huge 3rd down catches. Carnell Tate, the same. Just some of these guys who we've talked about all year long, the unsung heroes of this team, showed up tonight in the biggest stages in a game where, yeah, at one point it was 31-7, but there was times in this game where it was teetering, and Ohio State took control of it every single time.
The reality is everybody wants to talk about Jeremiah Smith, and I get it. And Emeka Egbuka tonight. He sets the Ohio State career receptions record where he passed KJ. I think it was 201.
Yeah.
He got to 203. I don't know how many he ended with, but either way, Emeka obviously takes a ton of the attention.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, it's like receivers 3, 4, 5 on the depth chart that, in my opinion, these last couple of weeks or would put Ohio State over the edge. It was Travion Henderson being this fresh, this late in the season, where he and Quinshon Judkins, if you go back and now look at their career numbers and think those 2 guys were in the same backfield for a year.
Crazy.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I love how the depth played, in my opinion, as much a role as the star power, even with some of the big star-driven plays tonight.
Yeah, and you talk about some of those star-driven plays. Like, you're going to remember the Jeremiah Smith motion to stop, to come back and into the flat. That's going to be the one that stands out. The one that stands out is going to be that play to end it up the sidelines. But like you said, the ones that stand out in my mind are Brandon Ennis catching a unbelievable route, actually. And it was a long developing route. The play as a whole, Will stood in the pocket. He got a free blitzer coming right at him, staring down the barrel of a gun, stuck in there and delivered it, moved the sticks. And it was like, that's a huge play. And then 3 plays later, it was another third down. It was Carnell again. And like Carnell, the last 2 games, 8 catches, 87 against Texas. And then tonight, only 2 for 35, but 2 big ones. And it continues to show up. This team, the depth of this team is what really stands out. And it was really the difference in this one tonight.
How about the evolution of the offensive line?
Yeah.
Think about where this team was in the middle of the season. And you felt like, okay, at the end of last year, the offensive line was an unmitigated disaster.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, myself included, weren't all that sold on what Justin Fry was doing. For Josh Simmons to be playing at a first-round draft pick level and then go down with an injury for the year. For Seth McLaughlin, who, in my opinion, other than Caleb Downs, he might have been a more important transfer for me than Will Howard. For Seth to be having the year that he has and then go down late with a season-ending injury, you're trying to shuffle some pieces around and figure it out in a way that ain't all that easy. And I thought, one of the most memorable moments of the game tonight for me was the 70-yard run from Quinshon Judkins that got sprung because Luke Montgomery made an unbelievable block as the right guard.
Yeah.
You win a championship because you have plays like that. Even you're relying on, hey, the right guard really stepped up, young kid. That was awesome.
Yeah, this guy Luke Montgomery, he's gonna be
Everybody's throwing confetti. It's a loose night.
Luke Montgomery, this is a guy to keep your eye on because 51 is going to be he's a dude. He brings the pain every time that he blocks somebody. He's throwing guys into the turf. He's the guy that you love to see, blocking. And he's one of those tough, hard-nosed, old school kind of guys. But in my opinion, you touched on him. Josh Fryer at right tackle, Donovan Jackson at left tackle. Those are 2 guys that when you break this season down, everyone will remember the big dogs. Everyone's going to remember Jeremiah. Everyone will remember Will and Travion and all those guys. But Donovan Jackson, you got to be the MVP.
He's an All-American guard that goes out and plays tackle at an extremely high level.
How does this year change if he isn't as good as he is? Where are you at? Did we just go play in the Tax Slayer Bowl, or are we here?
Probably not that low, but I don't know if you win at all.
Yeah, that's a guy who, when you talk about changing the dynamic of the season, changing the trajectory of the season, he's one of them. And Josh Fryer, I can remember back to the Team Up North game last year. It was him. It was 3rd and 10. Who gets beat off the right side? Josh Fryer. How does that game end? An incomplete pass because Kyle McCord was getting hit. The entire state of Ohio, Buckeye Nation was like, get this guy out. Yep. He could have folded really easily. That's hard as a young kid. Instead, he buckled down, played a damn good year. And Ohio State's offensive line was great.
I don't know what else to say offensively other than 41 runs tonight. I wouldn't have predicted that pregame. But I liked the balance. And I'm not just talking Travion versus Quinshon. I loved how many times Will had the ball in his hands tonight, some of which were by design and some of which were extending the pocket, realizing, hey, you know what? We need 8. I think I can get it here and take off and go. That's the kind of thing that I think Ohio State fans were hoping to see so much more of from C.J. Stroud. Yeah. They saw it at times from Justin Fields, never really saw it with Kyle. And Will – has always had that capability, but they've never pushed that part of his game. And tonight, you put it on display, and you're like, how do you stop this offense? The answer obviously was they really couldn't.
You don't, right? But my favorite part about it was the design quarterback runs were all in got-to-have-it scenarios. So when I say that got-to-have-it scenario, it's 3rd and 3, it's 4th and 1. There's a couple that, hey, he did that little shuffle move in the backfield, and they had a pulling guard, and he just stuffed his 6'4" body up in there. 240 is hard to. You're not pushing 240 backwards. 240 is going to fall forward for at least a yard. And I love that. What I really, really loved is when you get a team that plays primarily that man-to-man coverage thing, and it was evident tonight. I was wrong. We stood over there in pregame, and I was like, I think they're bluffing. They have to be bluffing. They weren't bluffing. Because they came out and that's their personality, and they said, screw it, we're going to do it.
When Ohio State scored 5 consecutive drives to start the game. Maybe they felt like that's what they had to do because that's who they are, but it wasn't going to work.
And without nerding out on football I'll avoid it, but when you know as a staff and as a team that you're getting man, I promise you, every one of those coaches was probably told their assignment was go give me the most creative, fun play you've ever found. That play for the touchdown, you've all seen it now on Twitter. It was the same exact play Alabama ran, because all you do as a coach at that point, you're getting man. You can do anything you want. You can do crazy motions. You can come across the field, because guess what? We know Ohio State, our guys are bigger, faster, stronger than theirs. So we can go crazy with it. The good part about that is when stuff does get covered up, nobody's accounting for the quarterback. So we talked about it. The offense line was great tonight. And when they pick up the blitz, because that's why you go man, you add an extra hat, they pick up the blitz, nobody's accounting for the quarterback. So, hey, everything's covered up. Guess what? I'm Will Howard. I look around real quick. I'm like, oh, no one's around me. And there's free 10 yards. I'm going to go take it. You can't go broke taking a profit ever. So really impressed by Will on all the design runs, but also to extending plays with his feet. I thought he was great with that.
Ohio State was 9 of 12 on third downs.
Yeah.
They gave up 2 sacks in the game. It felt like there weren't very many tackles for loss. There were a few from Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. But all things considered, I mean, this was an Ohio State offense that was really efficient. Obviously, Emeka Egbuka made one fairly critical mistake that probably should have cost them. I was not in Marcus Freeman's press conference. I don't know. I assume he was asked. I don't know what his answer was, but I don't understand why he kicked the field goal. I'm sure that's going to be the most questioned thing in Notre Dame's fan base. You're down 16. Why are you cutting it to 13? Do you think you're still going to have 3 possessions in the game? I think that was a tough one.
I was in on it. I listened, and he said it was 4th and 9. He's there at the 9-yard line. He goes, if it was 4th and 5, I would have gone for it. He's like, I just thought that if I kicked it, you're down 13, you get a little momentum. Then he goes, well, we didn't go for it. Then we missed the kick. And so it was like, all bad. He was definitely kicking himself for making that call. But hey, you live and learn, right?
For sure. All right, defensively, I mean, look, the easiest part of the game to figure out as an opposing offense is the opening series. Mm-hmm. And, Notre Dame on the opening drive of the game, they went 75 yards down the field. They converted 2 of 4 on third downs, and the 2 that they missed, they went for it on 4th down and converted both of those. It felt like a death by 1,000 paper cuts kind of drive. And I immediately thought, all right, game on. Mm-hmm. And by the way, there's 5 minutes left in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Ohio State hasn't touched the ball yet, but there was a really nice response by the Buckeyes the next couple series. Mm-hmm. This Notre Dame team didn't get a first down for the next couple of series. And in addition to the offense jumping out like that, I thought Ohio State did such a good job of moving laterally with them. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to take Jeremiah Love and try to, hammer the ball down the middle of the field. It was, let's try to get to the outside with some speed. Caleb Downs was there. Jack Sawyer running things down. I thought Cody Simon played a solid game tonight. I just thought this defense, after taking an early blow, did a really nice job of settling down. Yeah, and that early blow was tough, because you're like, that's a long drive. You're out there for a while. And again, thankfully, I thought it was cool because it was kind of a role reversal for this offense and defense. Like when the defense now needed the offense, and it wasn't in a dramatic way, but the defense needed the offense to step up a little bit. And they did that, and the offense did that, and you saw that complementary football come back. But the flip side of it, we're so used to the defense kind of pulling the offense along, but tonight you got a little reversal of that, which I thought was really neat. And yeah, I mean, it's the challenging part is you can sit there for 10 days or whatever they had to prep and know that, hey, Riley Leonard's going to run the football. Well, sometimes their offensive line is pretty good. Like their offensive line is a very good offensive line. And hey, we were watching, they moved the ball. They had big holes to run through. But to your point, the adjustments were great. And I think at one point in the third quarter, you had mentioned to me, said Notre Dame has 110 yards of total offense. And they had 75 of them came on the first drive. You're like, oh yeah, they've really settled down and made took Notre Dame's strengths away from them. So Riley Leonard ran it tonight 17 times for net 40. Mm-hmm. Okay. Jadarian Price, 3 carries for 13. Jeremiah Love, 4 carries for net 3. Faison had 1 carry for 1 yard, and they had -4 team rushing yards on the fumble. Outside of Riley running the football on his own accord, they really couldn't establish a run game. Yeah. And I think we said coming into this game, if Notre Dame had a prayer of winning, it didn't feel like there was a recipe for them unless they ran the football well. So I'm not surprised that the result ended with an Ohio State win after we saw, Notre Dame ultimately not run the ball well. But I do think Notre Dame deserves a lot of credit for staying in a fight long enough when you're down 31-7 and it doesn't look good. And you've got to figure out a way to, like, get some kind of juice going.
Mm-hmm.
And, they lead FBS in takeaways. It was a weird way to get a turnover, but they got one, right? They went down the field, ultimately didn't take advantage of that one. They just kind of, like, tried to make the game a little ugly late. And, if you're going to beat Ohio State, you got to do that kind of thing. And I don't think Notre Dame ran out of time. They weren't the better team tonight.
Yeah.
But the way they played as the game went on was what I think they needed to do for 60 minutes. And if they didn't have 3 straight offensive series of basically nothing, this game probably could have been a lot closer.
Yeah, and then we talked about it at the front too. When Notre Dame gets into chase mode, they're not built for chase mode, and we saw that tonight. They're not built to drop back. They're not built to throw it to their receivers. Their receivers are, I think, fine. Like, they're good. Greathouse made a couple really nice plays. That catch that happened right there. Catch, spin, turn, go. Like, that was a nice play. But they're not going to stack that consistently. So you look at it from that perspective, and you kind of felt like at 31-7. I think everyone had their feet kicked up a little bit. I think the Ohio State Buckeyes kind of took their foot off the gas just a touch, enough for it to get a little nervy in here. But you never felt like it was in doubt or in danger. I think, in my opinion, it's huge credit to Notre Dame for sticking in the fight. Like, a lot of pride over there. And I thought it was really cool that they continued to grind and made it a really good football game.
I want to talk about Ryan Day for a moment. Maybe we can dive deeper into this at another point, but this is a head coach that is 80 games into his head coaching career. He's 70-10. And if you have any job in America and you're 70-10, they're giving you the contract of a lifetime with no expiration date, and they're thinking about a statue, right?
If you close 70 out of 80 deals in your sales job tomorrow,
life's pretty good.
You're doing a good job.
Unfortunately, there are some really tough losses in that group of 10. And I think it takes somebody really special to be able to handle what he's had to handle personally and professionally. I'm really happy for him that he was able to keep this group together, shoulder some of the, in his own words, shoulder some of the stuff that went wrong in the Michigan game, where he said, hey, listen, we didn't do a good enough job as coaches. I failed you, and I'm sorry. And that was part of that big meeting. I think Ryan really needed this, and his fingerprints are all over this group. I think about the recruiting of Jack Sawyer and Travion Henderson and JT Tuimoloau and Emeka Egbuka, and right on down the line, those guys were being recruited during COVID. Yeah. And, this felt a little bit like, not a swan song, but it felt like the climax of what they thought they were building a few years ago and hoped they could achieve. And man, when things hit the wall the way they did that last Saturday in November, you really wondered what was going to happen, because you knew they were going to go to the playoff. There's 12 teams in, they were going to get in. But how would they actually put it together? And Ryan leaning on this team and on a coaching staff that did an excellent job offensively these last 4 games. 30 years from now, Ryan's going to be standing on the 50-yard line at Ohio Stadium, and they're going to have a reunion and bringing this team back. You think about all the great coaches in the history of this program, most of whom are Hall of Famers. Ryan right now has the 3rd highest winning percentage in the history of college football, and he's got a lot of runway, I think, still in front of him, as long as he wants to continue to do it. I'm happy for him, because I think that this gratifying win kind of gives him the ability to say, okay, listen, there's a lot of this, right? And when you're the head coach at Ohio State, the expectations are that you can't lose. Sometimes you do, but what he's doing is the right recipe. And to win a national title in a culture right now where everybody's talking about NIL dollars and what's in it for me, he's able to get a group of guys, coaches and players alike, to buy in together. And this is what happened. I think it's an extremely impressive coaching job.
Yeah, the way he answered the question, he was asked of it specifically, and he did it. It was the coolest answer I've heard him give in a really long time, and we've been doing this all year long. Brendan, you've been around him pretty much his whole career at Ohio State, me last 2 years, but seeing real emotion out of him was cool. Like, because you rarely see that. Coaches get into their coach speak thing and it comes out and, they talk and they say all the same things over and over. But tonight it was really cool. And I thought back to that last weekend in November, and I remember him being on the field and that whole skirmish was happening. And he just was like, you just saw this like blank stare in his face, and you're like, he knows like this is bad. Like, is like, yeah, he knows like how bad this is. And any normal person folds up shop. Hey, we're going to play Tennessee. We're going to get beat. I'm going to pack my bags. We're going to move to somewhere else. And I'm going to go coach in the NFL and get an off season. But instead he buckled down, got this team back in. And now you're here. And he talked about it. And he said, football is the greatest game ever because it gives you the highest of highs, gives you the lowest of lows. And he had said, I've been to both, whether it is losing
to your knees.
Yeah. Whether it is losing on this field on a missed kick on New Year's Eve as the clock struck midnight, or when you're at Boston College and you're grinding and you're a GA and you're up till 4 a.m. and your diet is full of Doritos and Gatorades. And you're just like, what am I actually doing? Yeah. When you get to this point, when you get to the top of the mountain, you look back, the journey makes sense. But he said that's what's really special about football is that it has that. It's that path. And when you're here and the confetti is raining on you, he said, I didn't know when I was struggling through all those times, when I was struggling against Georgia and when I was struggling going up, because it didn't make sense. But now that I look back at it, it all makes sense, and it makes perfect sense. And it was really cool to hear him say that type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm really happy for him. I'm happy for this staff. I think as a group, you go back and watch these 4 games and look at what they did offensively and, frankly, what they did defensively at certain points this year. I mean, think about the goal line stands against Penn State,
another one,
Nebraska, Texas, and again tonight. Like, just a remarkable effort all the way around. This is a team that was worthy of being called a national champion. There's lots of opinions around the college football playoff format in the first year of the 12-team playoff. I think Ohio State fans are awfully grateful that there were 12 teams because they got in, and if there weren't, they wouldn't have. It kind of felt like it was long overdue for us to get to this point. I personally feel that Ohio State was far and away the best team in college football this year when they played like this, although they were capable of losing. They did twice. I thought Oregon and Texas were clearly, in my opinion, the next 2 best teams, and I thought there was a little bit of a drop-off there. There were some other competitive teams. Notre Dame went on a great run, and they got a great draw. Yeah. I felt like the top half of this bracket was way more difficult than the bottom half of the bracket. Mm-hmm. And Notre Dame was a worthy national runner-up this year. They played a good game, and they clearly had the heart to make this a little bit of a comeback late. But Ohio State clearly showed by the end of this that, listen, a 12-team playoff gives you a shot to go play tournament football in a really cool setting. And they were ready for it, and they executed.
I saw a post the other day on X, and it was like people were so frustrated with this Ohio State team because we knew this was here. Yeah. This group, this Tennessee game was there. That Oregon game was always in there somewhere. That Texas fight was always in there somewhere. This first half was always in this group somewhere. They just couldn't get it out. And once they got it out, it was like, oh my gosh, this is what we've been waiting for. And sorry, Siri. But this is what we've been waiting for, and it was a special end to it all.
I don't know if I have anything else that's particularly pressing for tonight. Again, we've got a lot of things we can recap and talk about the team and the season. But the story of the night was Ohio State needed to come out and say, we're the team of destiny. Mm-hmm. This is our moment, and you felt it. You felt it in the weeks leading up to this as they continued to play well to earn their way here. And then, man, once they got in the building tonight and once they got that offense on the field the first time, you just kind of felt like they played as though they already knew the end of the story. And it's hard to do that, man. It's really, really tough.
Can I add one thing? Yeah. This environment was out of control.
That was nuts.
It was so awesome. If you're watching this and you're driving home or got to be here in Atlanta for the game, you experienced one of the coolest environments ever. I mean, it was split probably like right like this, or actually like this way. It was all red over here, all green over here. And two awesome fan bases. The Ohio State group was incredible. The Notre Dame group was equally incredible. And it was everything good about college football was tonight.
The second largest college football playoff national championship game attendance in the somewhat brief history, right? It's obviously year number 11. The largest attendance for a title game was actually the first one Ohio State won back in 2014 down in Dallas. There were almost 78,000 people here tonight, but to your point, it was 78,000 loud, and they were locked in the game. And, you know, for two fan bases that have the history that they have, it's weird to say this. In their own way, it felt like they were starving,
yes,
to win this game.
Yeah, you sometimes get these championship-style games in a neutral site, and it feels very corporate, very like, this isn't fan. It felt like we were on campus. Like it was rocking. Like the band was going crazy. OHIO everywhere. Notre Dame was doing their cheer. Like it was just so darn cool.
A night to never forget. Ohio State 34, Notre Dame 23. Buckeyes are the national champions. The group of guys that said we're coming back to try to give this thing one more go finished it off the way they had hoped. And Ohio State's able to put it together in the most impressive way you can honestly really imagine during this run of playoff football that started in the shoe and ended here in Atlanta, maybe even exercising a few demons inside this building, what they had a couple of years ago. I hope you've enjoyed our coverage throughout the course of the season. It's been so much fun to be with you as we documented this team's incredible run to a title. And it's over in the sense that there's no more games to play. It's not like, hey, the team that won tonight actually has to still go play Alabama to see maybe if they're going to win.
It was good.
But you know, it's been an amazing run, and there's still plenty more to come. I believe there's actually a press conference again tomorrow morning with Ohio State. They're staying locally tonight. Oftentimes the team, flies right after the game to go back home. The Buckeyes are staying in Atlanta tonight, so we'll have some content for you tomorrow morning after a press conference. And can't wait to see what is to come, because there are obviously players on this team that have already announced they're playing elsewhere next year. Had a chance to see some of the youth that are going to make a big impact next year, the Edric Houstons and Caden Currys, and who's going to be the quarterback next year? Is he on the roster right now? Pretty good chance of it, but maybe not. I don't know. Awful lot to think about and talk about in the days and weeks to come. But for Anthony Moeglin, I'm Brendan Gulick. Again, thanks for joining us tonight live in Atlanta. Ohio State 34, Notre Dame 23, the Buckeyes 2024 national champions.